a business in town. I moved out to, I'm out on Kitty Hawk Road, which is kind of out there by the 24-hour fitness place, you know. And I had been in the Sunset place, and they kind of booted me out. So I had to get out of there. And I did it about a year ago. So I've had 3 offices here in town. I started off on Portola. We built a building on the corner of Portola and L. That was Mike Thompson, myself, and Ole Olson. 3 of us Rotarians. And then I was in there for 20-some years, and we had sold the building, and I was just renting then. So I moved out to that Sunset building, and that was good until they decided they're going to tear it down, and I didn't like that. And I had to get out while the getting was good. So what I do out there in my business is I do structural steel detailing. And what that is we make drawings for steel structures and for the steel fabricators, steel erectors. So they can build the steel and it'll all fit together and go up and everything works wonderfully.
And it did.
The only prominent job I've done lately is the bandstand. I did that steel. That was, just a little gift for the Rotary Club and for the city, because as I say, I do love this place. So that's the work I do, and I've got a small business now. I used to have a big business. I had 30-some people that have an office. I had an office in Modesto and an office here. But since the internet and the people in India and China and every place else do what I do and do it on the internet and do it at a little bit less money, it's hard for me to compete. And so I'm relegated now to doing small jobs and, not very profitable kind of things. They've just taken the whole thing out of the business of steel, doing the drawings for steel buildings. So that's what I do, and let's see, I raised 4 children here. They all went to Livermore High School. I'm married, been married to a wonderful, wonderful lady for the last 31 years, and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. She came from San Lorenzo to live out here, and she loves it out here too. And then we 31 years ago, we got married, and we went up to Mendocino for our anniversary, for our honeymoon, and then we've gone back there every year to this little room that we have up there in Mendocino. So it's lovely. Guy couldn't ask for a better wife than what I have. I'm very blessed. I guess that's about it.
We're glad you're here too. So that'll cost you $10. All right, Marty.
Since you're so happy.
Thank you. Today, fellow Rotarians, we have a wonderful program. Tom Ramos is a 1969 West Point graduate. He served on active duty until 1981, and then he joined the lab. He served in the reserves for 10 more years and retired as lieutenant colonel. At the lab, he was I got to read this, a nuclear weapons designer in the 80s, working with the X-ray laser program. In the 90s and early 2000s, he created a program to analyze threats to the country from foreign weapons of mass destruction programs. And he's presently writing a history of the nuclear programs of the lab. So Tom's a neighbor of mine. I've heard this program. I thought it'd be great for our Rotary Club. Tom, come on up.
Well, hi. Thanks for inviting me, and it's great to see a bunch of great friends again. And so this is about a trip, and I just realized about 10 minutes ago, it was on this day 1 year ago, 22nd of July. We started out, a bunch of us, at the Presidio in San Francisco. And the occasion was, I had my 45th reunion at West Point coming up, and decided to save a little bit on airfare. We just ride there on so that was kind of an idea. And with my West Point class, we have this blog, we have this forum kind of thing on the internet or email. And so 2 years before this, I announced to my classmates and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Anybody want to join me? And at first I had about 20 names. And as we got closer and closer to the date, the names started dropping off left and right. And, but we had a couple of stalwarts join us. And so I think there were 7 of us took off that day. And what you see up on the wall now is the path we took. I'm going to get out of the way. This is the route we took. Thank you. Starts off in the Presidio, and basically we're heading east. And the route, there's a great organization called Adventure Cyclists in the United States, and they promote cycling within the country. And they try to get safer roads for cyclists and all sorts of other great things. And so they have these pathways that are going. And actually what I found out is this pathway right here was actually put together in 1976 as part of the Bicentennial program. And so it's also called the Bicentennial Trail. So for most of it, we were heading just due east and across. And there we go. So my daughter, who lives in Los Angeles, and she's an associate producer for a TV show called Hannibal. If any of you will watch it actually from after having heard me, but if you haven't, he eats the cast each week, if you haven't watched it. So anyway, it's kind of electric. But she got with a friend and they put the Hollywood style, and so we actually put a jersey together up there in the upper left. And there was a girlfriend who came up, she said, you need a sexy name for this thing. And I said, well, we're going from the Golden Gate Bridge to West Point. So it became Gate to Point, became the name of our ride. And you can't see it well on the jersey, but we were planning, a classmate of mine named Paul Ireland decided he's going to help. Now, Paul was kind of a victim of Agent Orange poisoning in Vietnam. And so he was not healthy in the greatest of health. So he couldn't bicycle away, but he wanted to join this thing. He was very adamant. And so he got a trailer, and he was going to basically what we call sag our way across and carry the equipment, so we wouldn't have to carry it on bicycles. And so Paul and I spent a better part of 2 years. He actually rode the entire route and reconnoitered it for us and everything else. And tragically, 6 weeks before the ride started, Paul died. And so we were in a real fix. I mean, we were even down to the point where the biggest point I was trying to plan was I had a kegerator, and I wanted to get a beer kegerator in, and now we're going to travel so that we can have fresh beer along the route. So we were having all these plans going. Unfortunately, Paul died. So what you don't see is on the sleeve, then Loretta, my daughter Loretta, also got it. And so we also made it a memorial, the ride, in honor of Paul, who put so much effort into this ride. So we were doing a lot of the packing up. Rose and I, it was my wife Rose and I decided, and Rose, some of you may have heard her talk, she also was part of a cross-country ride back in 2005, where 3 ladies went across the country. So these are just pictures. We went, just started working out. We all had our normal workouts and things like that. I normally, at lunchtime, in fact, usually at this time I'd be out up in the Altamont during lunch hour, doing a bike ride each day. It's just a good way to keep fit. I didn't do anything special beyond that, just kept up my normal day-to-day routines and found it was okay. You could transition over to this kind of thing quite easily. Our bodies are more robust than I gave it credit for. Now these were the guys that joined us. So Rose and I are on the left. Now Dan Moore, who's not my classmate, he was in the Army. Dan had ridden the length of California, and he wanted to do the width. And so he asked if he could join us the first three or four days, and I said, sure. So Dan joined us on that. And then the next 2 guys are my classmates. It's Phil Clark and Tommy Smith, who flew in. Phil's from Virginia, Tommy's from Boston, and they were not going to make the entire ride, but they wanted to go along for the part of the ride. So this is a group, and then we had 2 others that were going to drive the van, and they were going to show up at the Presidio. And here we are at the Presidio right before we took off, and we had a kind of a ceremony. These are my kids over here, and So the kids came up, my daughter, being the autistic person from Hollywood, came up with these signs, which are great to see us off. I don't know if you can see it, but it's only the Rocky Mountains get over it. And this was my, when I used to kid around as a younger guy, I used to call West Point Woo Poo You, which was in the 60s, you were not very popular if you had short hair, as some of you may know, during the Vietnam era. So when a young girl would ask me, where do you go to school? I'd say, Woo Poo You. Anyways, there was so the kids caught on to that. So we have all these nice signs, we're heading out and getting ready to go. And we also decided to devote this to a cause, there was an organization called CAUSE, which stands for Comfort for American U.S. Servicemen. And this is a retired Lieutenant General Caldwell. He was in the class of '67. He was 2 years ahead of me at the academy. And he created this organization. And so we ended up, as I went across the country, we would make radio interviews and do newspaper articles, really building up the ride. And we were getting donations from across the country for it. So he was there to help see us off. And we were on our way. This is looking at the way we would picnic each night. This van behind the stuff carried our stuff. And this would be at night. And in the West Coast, up until Colorado, we did a lot of camping. Once we got to Colorado, started heading east, campsites got fewer and fewer, it gets harder and harder, so we switched over to just motels, and we just stayed at a motel each night. And, well, kind of a scene from California, just to, I don't know if you can see I guess you can. This is Paul up here, Phil, and Phil, all he brought was that one little bag, and he had his tent and all of his equipment in that tent. It was Army planning at its best, and each night he would get this out, put his stuff all together, and in the morning, take him about 6 or 7 minutes, everything was packed in again, and we'd be back on the road again. Like that, and all of us were traveling as light as we possibly could. This couple here, Frank and Brenda, are the parents of my daughter's husband, so my in-laws, I guess. But they live up in Roseville, and they were really kind enough to open up their house to us. And so when we got up to Roseville at the end of a long day, Frank here was standing by his front driveway with a can of beer. It says, weren't by, we would just pick up a can of beer and pass it out. And they had a great backyard. And they were a wonderful couple, and their son, my son-in-law, was there cooking breakfast for us and cooking supper for us. And it was a great welcome kickoff for us. And so when we leave there, then we had to go up to Nevada City, and then up to, we have a cabin up in Truckee, so we're going to spend a night up in Truckee. So to get to Truckee, you got to go over Donna Pass. So this is one of our first big hurdles, it was getting over the Sierra Mountains. And here we are, we're stopping at Donna Pass, all of us really feeling proud, because this was the high point at the Sierras, and then we'd go down into Truckee. And as you see us looking, and what kind of got funny is, anytime we came to a summit for the rest of this blessed trip across the country, we had to stop and take a picture, and it was getting a little bit old, but this is one of our early ones, so we're still smiling. When you cross over Donna Summit, you're looking at Donna Lake, and it's just a very beautiful view. Going to come down, that's Truckee in the background, and we're going to cross over that bridge, come down, and we'll actually go up right along the left side of Donna Lake. And actually the cabin, I don't have a pointer, but the cabin's up on that ridge line, up on the left side of Donna Lake. And then we had one day off. Now what I did was, we didn't want to race or anything. We're in our 60s. And so other than making sure we were always close to a geriatric ward as we went across the country, we did take days off. So our first day off was after we got to the cabin. And my planning was that we were probably not used to this, which was true. And so after 4 days, we'd have a break. After this, it was more like 8 or 9, every 7 or 8 or 9 days, we'd take a break. We'd take a one day off. But this was our first day of break, and we're out here on the beach at top of the lake. There's Bill and Dan and Rose and I. And by this time, Tommy Smith had to go off on business. Tommy was quite a character. He joined us, and he was going to go as long as he could. But as he was riding along, he'd have a Bluetooth in his ear. And I remember coming up to him, and he'd be talking to somebody, and I had no idea why. And I realized he's talking to his Bluetooth. He's talking to somebody in Singapore, and Tommy's business was he opens up foreign businesses. And so he was making a deal right there on the road, and next thing he looks at me and says, I gotta go. So he took off the next day. This day, as we're doing this, we had to give him a ride up to Reno, and he caught a plane and ends up in Asia. And then he calls me up and emails me and says, well, okay, I'm ready to rejoin you guys, because we carried his bike along. And he ends up rejoining us in Colorado, and so he's trying to figure out an airport near us, and we all through Utah, we could not get an airport anywhere we were near. So finally, the closest one was Grand Junction, Colorado, and he tells me, he says, okay, I made a deal with the Indian reservation up here. They have a shuttle bus that goes along the reservation. So we got on the shuttle bus, and sure enough, in this little town in Colorado, this Indian shuttle bus shows up, and Tommy gets off, and he's ready to bicycle. That's determination. Here we are in, all right, so we're leaving Truckee. When you go out of Truckee, head south towards the lake, got to go over Brockway Summit. So we head up over Brockway, come down, and we're finally over the Lake Tahoe, and we're over the Spooner Summit. And when you come over Spooner Summit, then you're right down into Carson City, and then we're in Nevada. And crossing Nevada, we crossed on Highway 50, which they call the loneliest highway in the world. It is no longer the loneliest highway in the world. There were all sorts of trucks and everything going over this stupid thing. And what really bugged me was these rumple strips here. You do not take a bicycle over the rumple strips. You have to. So literally, when the shoulder got narrow, these so-called safety devices pushed us into the road. Oh. So they're much more dangerous than safe as far as we were concerned. I hated the damn things. They would just keep you off the road, and we'd have to, this is a 65 mile per hour road, and we were pushed onto the road because of these rumple strips. Anyway, we get to, this is where the Pony Express goes. This character here, you can just see him here. I'm sorry, I'm seeing at an angle. His name is Greg, and it's an Italian last name, and I've now forgotten his last name. But anyway, he was a graduate student in biology from Arizona State and was in this part of Nevada doing his research for his PhD. And he decided to screw the PhD, and he just stayed and opened up a bar. And so he's been there ever since. So he's still a bartender. Now, if you're in the bicycling world, like, you know, you get the magazines that we get, I already knew this man existed long before I started to ride, so I was thrilled. To me, it was like Michael Jackson or something. He was a very famous guy for us. So we got to drink a beer at his bar, and he owns a little motel, flea bitten little place, but we skipped that one. We went on a little bit. When you're in this part of the United States, where you're going to stop each night is well documented, because as you leave these little enclaves, the first thing you see on the road is a sign saying no services next to 80 miles. So you know where you're staying is, 80 miles from where you started. So that's how your nights were determined. Frankly, it's where civilization was on any of these places. And this is going through Nevada. This is what it looks like. Those are Mustangs, wild Mustangs that are out there. It's really beautiful, Nevada. It's going through it. Very, very pretty. It's up and down. It's not this big, huge desert or anything. It's a lot of up and downs. In fact, here, this is classic. This is what it looked like going across Nevada. You come over a summit, and you look in front of you, and you know exactly where you're going to be for the next several hours as you go. You can just go on. And you can see why, I don't know if that's one of the signs that says next services, but you can see why, where you're going to spend the night is not a mystery. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place to go through. So, where are we? Okay, and these are these summits in Nevada. And where you stay are these towns, Ely, Eureka, Austin. So they're all about 60, 70 miles apart, and they're all mining towns. And you can always tell when you're getting to a town because you see the tailings. This is huge tailings outside of Ely. And you can just see it for miles, and that's where we're going to spend the night, up there. That's the whole industry in this part of the state. I don't know if any of you are Lord of the Rings fans, but we're going through, and that mountain back there always had a cloud over it, so I called it Mordor. because as we went around, there was lightning, there was thunder, there was rain, and the cloud never moved. It just never moved. It was always over this mountain. I just thought it was really cool. When we get to there, we're in Baker, Nevada, which is right by the Utah border, and there's a national park there called Great Basin, thank you. And it's one of its claim to fame. It's the least visited national park in the system. So there we were. We can understand why. You are in the middle of nowhere. But we're in Baker, so a couple of things. One, we had to go see the Layman's Cave, I think it's called. And we were the only ones there. So we had our own ranger and we got our tour, and it's beautiful. It's a held cave. And well, we got the Rotary. They actually sponsor conventions in this cavern. So if you ever want to have a special treat, just drive out there and do it. The other thing is Baker is, as I said, 6 miles from the Utah border, and we stacked up on beer that night and got it into the truck. I remember sitting there, and each night I was writing a blog for what we had done during the day, and it was amazing how many people were reading my blogs. It was on Tumblr. It was on a thing called Tumblr. And as I was writing, two of the Park Service rangers, a man and a woman, they got in some sort of, not an argument, but in some sort of, they were discussing something and who was the better wrestler. And the next thing I know, they were on the floor and they were Indian wrestling. And as I remember, as I was blogging, they actually rolled under the table I was at and around the table. It was quite an adventure. Anyway, it was pretty cool.
Who was the better wrestler?
She won. That's it. All right, and here we are in Utah. This is the one of the guys that was driving. They would alternate. Him and his wife would alternate driving the van. Rose was always the most excited one. She was going to keep us going for this. And this would be how we'd have lunch. The van would pick, in this case, it was the one tree in about 50 miles. So we'd stop, get under the tree, and have lunch there, and then keep going. And then we're Utah. Utah is just beautiful. We were going by the national park areas. Went to Bryce Canyon, Escalante, Capitol Reef, and others. And this is Bryce Canyon. We stopped there. Panguitch, Panguitch, I think is the town outside. We spent the night in Panguitch. It was raining. It was one time it really rained, but that was one rest day, so it worked out pretty well. And coming out of Bryce Canyon, you then come into Escalante. So the scenery, again, it's just beautiful. We go down that road up here, and you can see off in the distance, you're down a bit. And so believe it or not, in that day, we went all the way down this road, all the way down into that valley, and then we had to climb up Boulder Mountain, which was 10 miles of a 5-degree slope. I think 5 to 8 degrees. Percent. Sorry, not degree. 5 to 8% slope. And it went up for about 10 miles. And then you came over that and went down, and you're in the town where close to Capitol Reef where we were going to spend the next night. So where we were going to spend the next night was way, way off in the distance there. And, it was kind of cloudy. So that's how much you go. We were averaging 65 miles a day when we bicycled. More of Capitol Reef. That's me changing a tire. I had, unfortunately, had about 10 flats. Rose never had a flat, which really irritates me even to this day, because she always makes a big point that makes her a superior bike rider, apparently. So anytime I stopped, she would always take a picture of me changing a flat tire. And anyway, it's just beautiful, beautiful scenery in the desert of this pod. And here's a good shot of Escalante coming down through that area. Now, as it happened, the day that we're going through there, we're having the tour of Utah, a big professional bike race. And I was trying to push the group because they shut down the highway as this thing's going. They were starting back in Panguitch, which we'd been the day before. And by the time they started, which was like 10 or 11 in the morning, we were 100 miles up the road. And I said, we still got to get moving. And we were just getting past these roadblocks before they shut them down. And I thought it was a matter of pride to get to the next stop before those guys got to us. Not a way. They caught up to us, which is unfortunate. But you can see here's the countryside going through, isn't it? It's just gorgeous, going through different parts and all the And here are the site. This is me on the side of the road taking a picture, and I was really irritated that we had a 100-mile head start and they beat us to the finish. I was the only one. All the ladies were there taking pictures, and I was the only one that seemed to be irritated, but that's me. These guys are amazing. They weigh about 138 pounds, about my height, and they just don't weigh anything, and then they just go. But this was that Boulder Mountain, that 10 miles of climbing, and we're at the top, and yes, we're very ecstatic. It was raining, it rained a little bit that day, not enough to get us off the road or anything, but we hit the summit, and it was really cool. That's 9,600 feet, I just say. There was the altitude at the top of Boulder. One of the things, you're going up 3.5 miles an hour, and you see things on a bike you're not going to see in a car making the same thing. So for example, going up, I could hear these cows mooing, and just mooing, and you looked into the pasture, and there they were. But then you noticed there was a calf in the middle, and there was a coyote, a big coyote, and the coyote was grabbing the calf on the neck and pulling it down and trying to drag the calf off, and the calf's mother was going after the coyote, you know, and she was the one that was doing the mooing, and eventually 3 or 4 other cows came over, and then they finally pushed the coyote away. The coyote was pretty stubborn. He kept going around the cows, going after the calf. But after about 15 minutes or so, the struggle ended and the coyote went away and the calf was okay and they brought it back. You're not going to see that in a car where you're going by that scene in about 10 seconds. But you're going 3.5 miles an hour, you get to see quite a bit of what's going on around you. We spent the night at Capitol Reef. Let's go down. One of the most beautiful parks in America, by the way. The Fremont River goes through there, and it cuts a canyon, and you have Indian petroglyphs, all sorts of great things to see. As we're seeing here, including some of the indigenous population going through. But this was a character. He was going across the country, carrying everything he needed, including a spare tire on his bike. I just thought that was so cool. And we're finally out of Utah, coming into Colorado. We're coming in near Dolores, Colorado. And Mesa Verde is right there. So we actually bicycled all that morning, got to Mesa Verde, camped, and then we spent the afternoon visiting Mesa Verde, which is a beautiful Indian architectural site. Oh, should go back. And Rose, I'll just mention, she just really had her knees were killing her the whole way. I'll bring it up now. Finally, I talked to her for a year about doing stuff, but one of my classmates finally talked to her and said, "Oh, Noah, if you get a new knee, it'll change your whole life." So now she's finally going to get an artificial knee. She's on the line now for it. But if you see her with all these patches on her knee, that's what they were about. They were trying to keep the pain down. So we're into Colorado. Now we're out of the desert and these beautiful Rocky Mountain landscapes. Coming up into Telluride. This is the town of Telluride, which is a ski resort, and it's pretty cool. 4 minutes. And then coming in out of that, we're coming into Monarch Pass, and in Gunnison, this is my classmate, Tommy Bernard. He's a veterinarian there, and he put us up for the night. It was really cool evening that we had with him. This is his wife, Polly, who suffers from multiple sclerosis. They built the house around her handicap, and so she was running around. She made breakfast, she made dinners. There's no feeling sorry for this lady. She was just great. We all fell in love with Polly and the kids. And this is us doing our laundry kind of stuff. And this is Monarch Pass, and the road's right here. You can see we're going up. It's another 10-mile climb up to the top. It started raining right after this. The temperature was about 46. It started raining, got really cold when we got to the top, and the wind was just howling. In fact, here we are. We have our jackets on, and we knew we had to move, and so we did. And so Rose kicked off, and she started it. I'm following her. We were going 46 miles an hour down the other side, down to get out of that cold. It was 91 degrees at the bottom on the other side. And at that point, we get to Pueblo, Colorado. This is Johnny and his wife, Mary Kay Peters, another classmate, another time to put us up. And then we're coming into, now we're on the East Coast, we're meeting more and more classmates that are putting us up. We're having little reunions here. We're all getting together. Ordway in southeastern Colorado. We get there, there's a restaurant. There's only one place open, it's a Sunday night. And it's this, here's the bartender. And I asked, well, what do you have on tap? And they had Coors Light. And I said, well, what else? Coors Light. What do you have on the menu? He said, well, we have cheeseburgers and pizzas. But if you order a pizza, the lady on the bar just ordered the pizza so the microwave's taken. You can't have one for 15 minutes. Tommy, right here next to me, said, we'll all have a hamburger. He says, we have cheeseburgers and we have pizzas. And and that was it. So we came in and he said, we had a run on cheeseburgers, there's only 3 left. So we ordered the 3, this is a day we were in 75 miles. We had 3 pizzas, Tommy had a bag of popcorn, and I ordered 2 bags of peanuts. And that was our supper. These people never heard the word vegetable. So, okay. Sorry? Okay. Well, we'll see. I'm gonna have to go fast. So we're coming to Kansas, spent a week in Kansas. Kansas is flat, the wind's from the south. The wind's going through. I guess I'm gonna have to skip a little bit quickly. These things carry steers, and that's McDonald's. And every 5 minutes, one of those trucks filled with steer passes by. And you know the meat hungry. When we got to Hutchinson, the American Legion came out and escorted us into town. It was really great. People coming out thought we were really important. Everyone's waving at us, and we're waving at people, and they had no idea who we were. Dan Cox came out. We had a nice little ceremony. We're midway through the country. We're into the Ozarks of Missouri. And Missouri's beautiful. Now we're back in the mountains. Just seeing trees was just a relief after going through the West. But the Ozarks, these are 16% slopes. They go up 200. So it's a different experience than the Rocky Mountains. These are much shorter but steeper type of hills. And it's just one after another there. So it can really work on your psyche. But we get into Illinois. That's the Mississippi River. We're crossing the Mississippi. Chester's on the other side. It's the home of the guy who invented Popeye. The town's really proud. And then one of my classmates, Glenn Ivey, met us, and you see the West Point sign, and he helped keep us safe on the road, keeping cars away from us. And this is the Ohio River. And this is, if any of you are Davy Crockett fans, when Davy Crockett was the river king, remember he gets tied up and the pirates put him in a cave, and that's the cave that they filmed that one. None of you are Davy Crockett fans, I can tell. And then we're in Kentucky, and going through Kentucky, learning how they make tobacco. The home of Lincoln. All of this is filled with bourbon. All those buildings are chock full of bourbon. Kentucky is where they invented bourbon. And, okay. And we're coming finally into Virginia, into the Alleghenies, and into the Adirondack, into the Appalachia. In the Appalachian Mountains, and how it is out there. My picture of the banjo. These are fighting cocks. They keep their fighting cocks in those. It's quite open. I was a little bit surprised to see stuff like that. But the countryside was just beautiful. And we got to the Virginia Military Institute. My classmate there was the head of their public affairs office, so we were the guest of honor at a big parade. And so we got to get to see some really neat stuff at BMI. Now we're going up for 3 days. We went along the Shenandoah Skyway, and you're looking down into the Shenandoah Valley off to the west. More beautiful scenery. University of Virginia. More people joined us for the ride. We're crossing here. That's the Potomac River, and that was a bridge back in the 19th century, and that's where Robert E. Lee's army crossed on his way to the Battle of Gettysburg when they were fighting. And that's where the Rebs came into the north. And this is the Antietam battlefield. And then we're coming into Pennsylvania. Okay, all right. And this is lunch. Coming into Gettysburg, where we had my classmate here owns a company that has tours of the Gettysburg battlefield. And I'll stop at any time, but I got about 5 more slides to go. Sure. Well, I gotta say something.
Keep going.
All right, so we're down by the Amish. Rose got a quilt. A lot of great stories I'm not going to tell you about them. And, some of the fall patterns were coming out. And finally, we're coming into New Jersey, which I think some of you think are chemical plants. It's actually quite pretty, the Garden State. And we're in New York. And finally, Camp Buckner is the camp outside of West Point where we did our summer training. And this is where we were met by the cadet cycling team, some of the members. They came out and escorted us into the gates of West Point, where we come into Trophy Point, which is our West Point end of the trip. And here's a nice picture with us and the cadets as we're through. And Rose took some nice pictures. There was a parade the next day, so we got to watch a nice welcoming parade. A friend of mine gave us this thing. I'll just read it real quick. We should not be in the journey to the grave and the intention of arriving just as we're out of blah, blah, blah. When you get there, you need to be full of strength and say, Yahoo, and keep going. Oops, that's Rose. Okay.
Okay, I'll suck for you. You can take your pick, wine, some olive oil. Oh, there you go. All right, really quick, I have this bag. I don't know who it belongs to. Does that look familiar over there?